Following the rumours surrounding the cursed princess, Prince Florian, also known simply as the Prince, rushed to the aid of Snow White, a princess whom he had fallen in love with. The truth is, the princess was under a sleeping curse and presumed dead by her companions. But what journey did the prince take to get to this point? All of that information lies in the original plans that Walt Disney had for the prince in the animated movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Today we're going to break down everything that was planned and why it didn't happen in the final movie. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Heading into analysis mode for Disney at the beginning of the company's introduction to the world of movies is somewhat difficult. A lot of ideas and inspirations have been developed, planned, sketched and then left on the cutting room floor. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs being Disney's first movie is no different in that respect. But the biggest changes from the planned outline for the movie were the plans they had for the prince. In order to explain these plans, let's go back into the development of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and take a look at Walt Disney's original ideas. A lot of additional information can be found in expanded works and comments from the people behind the scenes and sometimes Walt Disney himself. So with a disclaimer, this information comes from 1937 Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, various expanded media, interviews with cast and crew and Walt Disney himself. When designing characters for Snow White, Disney wanted to create a princess that female viewers could relate to or inspire to be like. A villain that was memorable, sidekicks that would become well loved and a male character that could draw inspiration from famous names of the era. When preparing the concept for the prince, Walt Disney stated in his notes that he wanted to showcase a character similar to the kind of energy that Errol Flynn gave in his movie roles. Errol Flynn was known to portray heroic figures who were often featured in action-packed movies. He was a desired actor for any kind of big screen flick back in the 1930s onwards. Walt Disney wanted the prince to be a loving yet courageous character that would fight for Snow White when she needed him the most. He was also stated in the writings of the movie's designers that he was 18 years old. I'd like you to keep this in mind as we proceed with everything that was cut from the movie regarding the prince. The age of this character is important when you consider how dark this story was going to be. In a canon comic strip that was released when the movie hit theatres, the cancelled scenes involving the prince were retained. It's established that Snow White and Prince Florian were childhood friends and met each other frequently, meaning their meeting in the movie wasn't the first time they met. He would engage in playful conversations with Snow. Snow White knew the evil queen would grow jealous if she saw them together, so she began pulling away and ignoring him upon visits. The queen initially noticed the prince's arrival and believed he was discussing her when he spoke of how beautiful he found Snow. The darker and unsettling aspect of this story was that the evil queen desperately wanted this 18-year-old prince to fall in love with her. This was the original motivation for her jealousy towards Snow. Following the singing scene in the movie, in a deleted sequence the queen has the prince captured and chained him up in her dungeon. The dialogue between the pair in this scene is some of Walt Disney's most unsettling. The evil queen goaded the prince in the dungeon and told him that once she'd taken care of Snow White, she would return and he would return her affections whether he wanted to or not. He was defiant and said no. Yet the queen still claimed she would force him to love her whether he liked it or not. Quite disturbing stuff if you think about the implications here. They would never get away with making that today. It was this scene that explained why the prince found Snow in the movie. The queen in her arrogance bragged about what her plans were for Snow and even told him about the sleeping curse she was putting her under. Basically, her own talkative arrogance pretty much told Florian how he could save Snow. In an entire deleted sequence following this, the prince would break out of the jail once the old hag had made her way to the dwarf's cottage. Here he would seek the assistance of the woodland creatures to guide him to Snow White. The prince wouldn't have been able to understand the forest animals, making that a unique thing that Snow had. However, the horse that he rode would be able to understand what they were saying, and the pair would head towards the cottage to find Snow as she took a bite of the poison apple. He wouldn't have landed there in time, and Snow White would have been cursed. The rest of this story transpires in the movie, exactly as it was written. So following all of this, why exactly was this changed? Why was this expansion of the prince's story abandoned when the movie was released? Well, it wasn't because it was too dark. Walt Disney was adamant on using the story for the prince in Snow White, but a major complication caused this idea to be abandoned entirely. The prince was animated by Milt Kahl, who had the task of bringing the movements of a live-action actor to life through the uses of animation. The problem was that Milt was very open about the difficulties he was having animating the prince. Nothing seemed to be translating well into animation. The frustrations behind the animating process led Milt to confide in Walt, who sadly decided to limit the screen presence of the prince. The continuous issue of animating men into a Disney movie was something that would continue to create problems for the company. It wasn't until Sleeping Beauty 1959 that Milt perfected the technique, and as a way of showcasing their efforts, Walt Disney told Milt to include the expansive sequence that was planned for Prince Florian reworked into that for Prince Philip in Sleeping Beauty. And so we had the entire escape sequence and a battle between a prince and a dragon in Sleeping Beauty's climax, and this was put there to make up for what was missing from Snow White. All of this has left me wondering, how different would Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs have been if they'd included the sequences with the prince? In my opinion, it would be awesome if Walt Disney revisited these sequences and reanimated them, similar to the 2D animation that they came with, but imagine getting these deleted sequences but within the vein of the cartoons. I think that would be cool. But is that something that you'd like to see? Share your opinion below and let's have a discussion about this. And that's it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed this trip down Disney Lane. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you back here to delve into more of the Walt Disney Diaries.